I was just sharing how when I was talking with this reverend and a bishop, that I said we always ask the question, why is there so much hate? Why do people hate Jews? And the reverend turns with me very serious, because you are the chosen people. And I know I'm repeating what I just said, but it's interesting how in the movie they were really addressing it's more, people don't always celebrate success. They see success sometimes as a reflection of their own failure, and that's something to be destroyed. But Joshua, what do you think your initial takes on what we all just heard?
Yeah, I thought the conclusion of the film, where it turned to sort of explain the all of the different theories of why the Jews have been so successful in terms or in relation to anti-Semitism and the Holocaust, was really powerful, and did, it really, I think, reframed a lot of it in a way. But I thought it was a fascinating movie. What I think what I got the most out of from it, and what I want to hear from people about, is just the wide variety and range of individuals that were interviewed and represented from so many different places and fields of endeavor. And the film did I thought, a really wonderful job of in kind of brief clips. There were maybe at least, I think, about a dozen people, allowed these different individuals to kind of explore in really meaningful ways how their own pursuits, whether it's architecture, or chess, or writing, or you name it, how those pursuits are shaped by their own kind of very complicated relationships to their Jewishness, to their way of relating to the past, to the rest of the culture around them, and so forth. So I really thought, each one of them was fascinating on its own, and then as a sort of a tapestry, it really it was quite a fascinating experience, I think. But I'm curious, if people want to talk about individuals that we learned about, or if we want to try to work through a little bit more a sort of kind of grand theory of what the film is arguing, because I'm not sure it's so clear what the unifying theory might be.
Right. So two questions there's actually three questions that have come in. One of them was, so why the Jews? And the person said, I thought there was a common theme to the answer, not the religion or ceremony, but the way we were raised by their family and community, ask questions, get educated, challenge in literacy.
Yeah, I think that was one thread of the answer, and that was very powerfully articulated by quite a few of the speakers. But I thought there were other theories that were floated, right? There was the theory of evolutionary psychology, or kind of a more genetic theory that I think Charles Murray was the main spokesperson for, that over the millennia there has been a kind of pressure, a selective pressure at different points in history that has kind of made Jews have higher IQs. So that was a different theory. I mean, that was one theory. And then, there were other interesting things that I think something that came up in a few of them was the rebelliousness that Jews in history at different times that have broken with tradition, that have pushed back on conventions, whether that makes them better venture capitalists, or better writers, or better architects, innovators, right? So it's that tension, right, between having the strong tradition that inculcates you into being literate, being well educated, being believing that women also should learn how to read. That came up a couple times. And then, but then also the pushback, right? The also being told at the same time that it's good if you say no to the rabbis when they teach you something that you don't think is right. So I thought that was a kind of a fascinating tension too.
Yeah, it was interesting. Someone wrote, if the world hates Jews because of our accomplishments, where does that leave us?
It's a really good question. And that's really kind of how the film ends. And I think it's a difficult question. I think a little of that did come up in the section. Well, a few of the people, I'm thinking of Dr. Ruth actually, who raised it in sort of an interesting way, that you have to try to make the world a better place, even if because you start from trauma, right? Or for Dr. Ruth, she started with trauma, the memories of having been one of the sent on the kinder transport from Frankfurt, Germany, as a 10-year-old, and then having her family all killed in the Holocaust. But then she brought so much, passion for life, right? Joy and the most positive way of approaching life that you could possibly imagine. And she articulated that in terms of, she's proud that she believes she's made the world a better place.
Right, going back to Tikkun Olam.
Yeah. And I think that it's not naive. She knows that that the Nazis killed her family. She's not forgetting about it, but she's taking that and turning it into a way to live a positive, bright life. So that's one model, I think, for that.
And so another question was, if Jewish success is a driver of anti-Semitism, why have Jews persisted in being successful in the face of anti-Semitism?
Well, I think
that is a mouthful.
These are the really, I think, really profound and difficult questions that the film does raise and give us some ways to think about, even if it doesn't answer them. So what that makes me think of was the section with Shimon Peres. That was the section that kind of dealt the most, the most fully with Israel, modern day Israel, which also, of course, just in and of itself is challenging in these terms. But he said that that some people reacted to anti-Semitism by wanting to change the world, and those people were the communists. And then other people reacted to anti-Semitism by wanting to protect themselves and make a place for Jewish people, for themselves, and not worrying about the world, right? And just having a Jewish state, a Zionist state, they were Zionists, that would then allow the Jewish people to protect themselves and to be a normal, quote unquote, nation, and so I think that's that when confronted with people who hate Jews, who are anti-Semitic because of Jewish success in the world, there's two responses, right? There's the response to say, well, I'm going to try to convince you that you're wrong, and I'm going to try and show you that Jews are actually good people, and I'm going to try and change your mind and the world's mind, right? Or you can say, you know what? I'm going to build a wall around the Jewish culture and protect ourselves. And there were examples of both types of engagement, right? So the rabbi that was near the end, the rabbi who was in Japan, who wrote the the popularization of the Talmud. It was also fascinating. So he, he clearly was very enthusiastic about the ways that he had played a positive role in bringing knowledge of Judaism to other cultures, right? So he that was his way of dealing with this question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was always interesting when I think it was who said, well, the communists thought the Jews were capitalists and the capitalists thought the Jews were communists. I'm like, damned if you do, damned if you don't,
Yes, exactly.
So, now this is a totally different tangent. You may not have an answer, but I will throw it out there. Do you know of any resources or suggestions for people who are part Jewish but family converted and hid to I guess learn more about that part of themselves? I guess if they want to find more of their roots, to learn about more of themselves.
I mean, well, just to learn about Judaism more generally, I don't have a book to recommend off the top of my head. I mean, this movie is actually a great introduction, I think, to
Yeah.
but to learn more about one's family, I guess there are, again, it's not really my area of expertise, but I guess there are a lot of resources online. You can look up the town where your family was from and the family name and people do. I mean, you might, Karen.
No, I'm smiling because I was like, well, I know our board president has done lots of research on family, and I just actually got an email, a random email from someone who was doing research. Is like, but I found that your grandparents, your grandmother. I'm like thinking, going, okay, you know more about my family apparently than I do. But I will. Well, I'll talk to her offline and see if that's the direction she was looking. Another comment that came in, survival of the fittest and inbreeding caused smartest, the most independent and most creative to survive. So
yeah, I mean, I think so. I myself am not so comfortable with the notion that the Jewish success is largely just based on genetics.
I know a number of dumb people.
Yes, exactly. And I found the arguments that Charles Murray was making about about sort of that Jewish IQ is based on sort of these pressures, evolutionary pressures over the last 2,000 years, and that it's really something that's kind of measurable, and that you could say this is what is the key, or at least is the foundation that then Jewish success is built on. I'm not so comfortable with that. I mean, part of the reason is I feel like, even one of the things that I was thinking about watching this is that comparing, a composer in the 19th century with an entrepreneur in 2016, what is it that connects those two, those two pursuits, those two types of success? I think they're not that closely related. I mean, I think we can say, yes, they may both identify as being Jewish. They may both have been raised in some ways that would be familiar to each other. But the context in which they're functioning is so different that, I think the tendency to say these are all successful for exactly the same reason doesn't seem right to me. I think that's why I did like what Alan Dershowitz said at the end. One of the things he said, it's elusive. There's a lot of factors. It's not one thing. It's not this or that, and it's sort of, there's just a lot of different elements to it. And that's how the film kind of presented it, that there's, an architect is doing something different than a chess player, and they come from different backgrounds, and there's some things that sort of connect it and some commonalities, and it's really sort of fascinating to see those, but it's not like one thing that you can say, this is what it means to be Jewish in all times and all places, and this is how that identity leads to a very specific set of traits that are a success.
Right.
I don't buy that.
So I'm going to throw out probably potentially the $1 million loaded question. So with the recent Pew research saying that excluding the Orthodox community, I believe it's 72% of Jews are intermarrying. So the question is, what are your thoughts about the future of Jews and their successes based on interfaith marriages and offspring?
I don't know. I can't predict.
Wait, are you going through a tunnel right now? You can't hear me.
I'm very hopeful. I'm an optimistic person by nature, and I believe that the Jewish people have been through so much in so many places, in so many contexts, and are doing great right now. So I think the future's bright. I mean, I think there's, who knows? I mean, who knows? Who knows? What our kind of attitudes and beliefs about families and identities are so different today than they even were 10 years ago, right? So I don't know. I don't know where we'll be in 30 years. I don't think anyone knows. I think
hopefully not wearing masks.
Yeah.
Hopefully being together in person.
Yes. But I am optimistic, and that's one of the things that I think this movie, though it shows a lot of dark aspects of Jewish history, which there are certainly a lot. So much triumph, so much creativity, so much love and courage from people from all over the world, different times, different class backgrounds, different fields, and to me that's what it's all about. I mean, it's a beautiful film in that way, and so I think it's going to be okay.
I like when the person said something like our parents, they just expect more. And, as a parent, yeah. I expect a lot from my children. They're like, well, why do you expect so much? I said, because I know you can reach it, and I think there's just that, yeah, it's not going to be easy, but, you need to do better and better because that is just what is expected. At least, I don't know, in our household.
Yeah.
But it's funny also the different perceptions of what it means to be Jewish. So when I lived in Asia, in China in particular, and I speak Chinese, so I was like, oh, look at the pictorial. I'm like, it's great. I know how to do that. And they would say, oh, or I say, well, sure, you're tyrant, like I am Jewish. And then like, oh, so I was like, oh, what are you gonna say? Like stereotypes, am I rich? Am I that? They're like, oh, hen song ming. They're like, oh, you're really smart. I'm like, okay, I'll take that. Like that. I think that expectation though of education and family, and somebody mentioned, to Dr. Ruth, her family was very important, and keeping that family alive. And someone mentioned being isolated in ghettos on a community level or a global level puts more pressure to survive on your own, which drives the motivation for technological advancement without outside help. So, but the interesting thing is, it's also, again, going back to Tikkun Olam, when they found the drip irrigation, they didn't just say, we're going to keep it for ourselves and double our thing. They said, no, the right thing to do is to share. And just looking at that country of what it was and where it is today is just a true testament of that strive and drive to be better, to do better.
Yeah. And there was a question in the chat too, or comment about that's sort of the flip side of what you were bringing up about the isolation, the ghettos, that she says that the exposure to other cultures and genes has strengthened the genetic fiber rather than allowed it to weaken. And even putting aside maybe the genetic aspect of it, certainly I think that one of the things historically that made Jewish communities resilient and successful was their ability to kind of interact with the dominant culture wherever they were. So, in Europe, in the US, South America, wherever, to kind of be both part of a dominant culture, but also separate from it, and to move within those spaces. I think that has been a hallmark of a lot of successful Jewish communities. So not isolated, but also not totally assimilated, right? This kind of living on the margins, but in a good way that then allowed success.
Interesting, and I don't remember who said it, but he said, I don't follow regular traditions. I don't eat kosher. I don't go to services, but I feel in my fiber Jewish every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a change over the years of just, being culturally Jewish, shall we say, which is people can feel very strongly Jewish without necessarily being at services every Shabbat. So that's another kind of component that I don't know about you or the rest of the community, but when I go overseas and I meet somebody who's Jewish, we both know the Shema, and there's just an automatic connection in culture, whether it be because everybody's trying to kill us or whatever it is, but there is that commonality, which I think is a potentially a unique thing that is one of our strengths.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I do want to thank you for joining us tonight. I don't think there's any last minute questions, although I'm just checking. I mean, maybe there is no answer why the Jews. Maybe that's our strength, questioning and challenging and asking. We just figured it out.
Yeah, that's it. Answer question with the question.
Oh, we're geniuses, aren't we? We just figured out the whole thing. But I do want to thank you, Joshua, for joining us.